Okay, perfect. So to start off, I'm going to just be doing a quick introduction, and then I'll turn it over to our facilitators. I hope you guys can see my screen. Yep, perfect. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Care for Caregiver webinar series. I just wanted to acknowledge that this is a collaboration with the CMHA BC, Safe Care BC, with funding from the Ministry of Health. Today's webinar is on understanding stress, injury, and enhancing resiliency. And before we get started, I know that we're all joining from various places, but I want to do virtual. Although we're virtual, I still want to do a quick land acknowledgement. So our offices are located on the traditional territory of the Musqueam and Squamish speaking peoples. We are grateful to live, learn, and work on these shared territories. And if others would like to share in the chat where they're joining from, we'd all be very happy to share. I apologize that I'm just allowing some more people to enter. So, and a quick, I would just like to quickly share our facilitators. So today we're so thankful to be joined by Courtney and Giles, and they're both part of the mobile response team. I'll let them do their own detailed introduction, and I will turn it over to them. Just gonna stop sharing. So thank you both and welcome.
Thank you. I don't know, Giles, do you want to start and then I can just bring up the slides?
Yeah, no problem. Okay. So first off, I heard that my volume isn't the greatest, so I'm really going to try to speak as clearly as possible to make sure that everybody hears what I am saying. My name is Giles Ringer. I'm part of the Provincial Mobile Response Team. Courtney and I are both crisis intervention specialists with the team. I'm also a registered social worker here in the province of British Columbia. We all work remotely, and Courtney is down in the Lower Mainland with many of our other colleagues, and I'll let her do a bit more introduction about that. I am out of the traditional and ceded territory of the
Oh, I think, Giles, you muted yourself.
There we go, I'm back on. So I currently live in the traditional and ceded territory of the Silk Okanagan Nation. At this point, I was asked to come down to Merritt, which we are sitting in the Shtwakum Tribal Council in Merritt. There are a number of bands in the area. To move forward a little bit, MRT, what we do on MRT is we provide short-term psychosocial support to frontline workers, first responders, and people with living experience since 2017 when the overdose crisis was announced. As of 2021, I believe it was, we expanded the mandate to support individuals within the healthcare system who were impacted by COVID outbreaks. And it's sort of expanded from that point. Everything that MRT provides is free and confidential, and individuals can reach out to us directly to receive that individual support, either through over the phone, virtual, or in person. Because we have a team of 10, approximately 12 to 10 on any given day, we cover the entire province and are able to travel around and can see you personally, which is a lovely opportunity. Anything I missed, Courtney?
Yeah, I think that was great, Giles. And I'll just give a brief intro to who I am, and then I'll just sort of explain maybe a couple more mobile response support. So my name is Courtney, and I mainly work in the downtown east side, providing support to the COVID mandate and then the drug poisoning mandate. So supporting the frontline workers who work within the downtown east side area. And so very grateful to be here today with Giles and present to you a workshop, the second one, I believe, that has been facilitated by us. And a couple other things that I could add on to our team is, I don't know, we do the individual support, we do group support, and we do debriefs. So that's something that we can also provide to teams within the COVID mandate or the drug poisoning mandate as well. And you can always reach out to us. We'll have our contact information at the end. If you want to ask any questions, you can contact Giles or I or others on our team in regards to, you know, supports. If you're looking for additional supports working on the front lines, or you just have questions in terms of longer term support, such as counseling, we can also help navigate that. Yeah.
I think lastly, as we're doing this here, we're doing a workshop here. We have a number of other workshops we also provide and other supportive engagement. So things like our mobile wellness that we can bring to a site and provide a positive space for individuals to take their breaks and have some activities and snack and then be able to speak with us. But yeah, please reach out if you have questions.
Yeah. So today we're going to be doing the Understanding Stress, Injury, and Enhancing Resiliency workshop. And so we'll just go over the learning objectives for today. So we're going to go over the mental health continuum model, and that's just sort of a check-in tool that people can use for their own self-care. And then we can also use it in a collective care setting. And then the next point is focusing on that self and collective resiliency or care. So building that team capacity and working with each other, and that vulnerability aspect of, you know, we're human, we're working with humans, and we're still coming out of a pandemic. So there's that fatigue, you know, the after effect of the pandemic, and then also other things that are happening, whether that be in personal life, work life. And so how do we take care of ourselves? And then how do we take care of each other as a team and avoid that burnout? I don't know if you want to touch on this slide briefly, Giles, before going to the next one.
Yeah, I think stress injury is something that's really important to be mindful of when we talk about the compounding factors of stress. And as Courtney spoke to, when you have you know, your work life, that typically many of us know what we're getting into when we go into work, and what we want to be doing there, or what we know what we will be doing there. The stress comes from it, and typically we can manage that. But once we throw on the other compounding factors, right? We live in BC, it's a high cost of living. We have families or friends or other connections that are outside of the province. And then you throw in floods and fires, and overdose crisis and COVID. And then you look on the outside into the rest of the world and some of the struggles that are going on. Those stresses can really increase. Sorry, I'm getting comments that I need to speak louder. That when those experiences impact us, we can really experience a high level of stress, or the stress increases to a point where it begins to impact what we are doing, and how it impacts our lives. And so stress injury is what comes from that when we are in our workplace or others, and we're helping people, and we're hearing the individuals, what they're talking to us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is something that we often bring into our workshops, the mental health continuum model, and it's through the Mental Health Commission of Canada. And you can go and look on the website just to get a bit more information for each sort of color code. And we look at the bottom here and we see green, yellow, orange, and red. And so there's certain maybe things that we might notice in ourselves physically and mentally at each stage. And everyone's baseline is different, right? We could be providing support to clients where their baseline might be in the yellow or orange, right? And so being mindful that it is a continuum, and someone could maybe start the day green and then end the day in orange, right? You know, the day goes on and we're working and we have no time to sort of focus on ourselves and check in with ourselves. And this is just a reminder of, okay, so I'm walking into the work. Where am I starting that day? Am I a little bit more elevated? Is something in my personal life impacting me? And then I come into work and there are certain triggers, right? You're providing support to someone who might remind you of a family member, or a personal thing that you've gone through. And so just checking in with each other on a more frequent basis, because I think in a helping profession, we often forget to do that check-in with ourselves. And we sometimes find it easier to provide support to others as opposed to ourselves. And so this is just something that we can use, and it's sort of helpful to have that imagery, the colors, rather than, sometimes it's hard to come up with the words to describe where we're at throughout the day. And so there might be other continuums that you might use where there's the happy face, right? And different emotions that you can point to and say, hey, this is where I'm at the beginning of the day. It might be like a team check-in that you do. And then at the end of the day, sort of reassess where you're at and whether or not there needs to be a conversation as a team. So, hey, how's everybody doing? A shift changeover. Do you check in with each other during that period? What does that look like? And so I think what's important in this line of work is to do those continuous check-ins, because burnout is so high in a profession where we're supporting other people. And so how do we work with each other to sort of prevent that from building up and that compounding stress? And that's why these daily check-ins, and we'll go over that sort of more towards the end of the workshop, but why they're so important. And I suggest sometimes to teams, sometimes the only time that you get a break is when you're in the washroom. So taping this up on the back of the door is sometimes a great idea. And some teams have been doing that. And sort of where can you implement this into your daily practice? Giles, do you have anything you want to add to this slide?
Yeah, I think it's important to be mindful of not just where you are on this, but when you look at what it indicates underneath about what you should, and I really don't like using the term should, because it adds extra pressure onto us. But you see that, when you're in orange, right, time to get professional help. And for myself, I'm not sitting at an orange level, but I already access professional help. If you have the opportunity to connect with a counselor or someone to speak with, that is something that can really support your mental well-being, and can be a self-care process. I call crisis lines, and not because I'm in constant crisis, but because it helps to have somebody else for me to debrief with and just allow myself to just vent some of the information that I've been carrying. But yeah, take everything you see on there with a grain of salt, and basically it's about reflecting as to where you are and how you're feeling based on the day.
Yeah, and I think it's great to be transparent about our own support. So yeah, thank you for that, Giles. And I also want to mention that I have, my own supports. I did burn out on the front lines. And so I had to sort of figure out what are these professional supports that I can help or have in my life to sort of prevent this from happening again. So prevent myself from getting to that crisis area. And so, yeah, I access a counselor as well. And I think it's great within a profession where we're constantly helping others and supporting vulnerable people to have extra supports, whatever that might look like for yourself, right? So you might not be interested in accessing a counselor, but our team, the mobile response team, can also be a level of support that can be accessed, whether you be green, yellow, orange, or red. You can just pick up the phone, and sometimes people call us just to vent, right? And get it off their shoulders so that you're not keeping what's happening in the workplace just to yourself. We don't want you to carry that on your own because it's too heavy. There's too much going on in our environment, in our communities for an individual to bear that on their own. So please do reach out to us if that's a level of support that you might be interested in. Okay. Just gonna go to the next slide. So engaging resilience, we're going to go over that over the next several slides and what that looks like. What does resilience mean? And so let's just delve into that.
Yeah. So what is resilience? I'm trying it without my headphones to see if this is any better. I do apologize for any volume issues. Hopefully you can hear me now, though.
I think that's a bit better, Giles. Yeah.
Okay, great. So resilience is your ability to cope with and bounce back from stress and adversity, and hopefully even grow through the experience. It's sometimes referred as thriving and not just surviving. And you see that, it really is, we get knocked down a lot during the day, and things come across our table, which can increase our stress, or can just put us on a bit of a tailspin, and then we struggle about what it is, how we're going to be able to manage the rest of the day. I have 3 children at home. They're all teenagers, and so I'm always constantly trying to bounce back up to my baseline. But yeah, resilience is not a fixed state. You may be more resilient at different times in your life than others. And I think that's also really important to say, because for instance, as you go through life, you may know people who have other struggles that you're very close with, and that may impact your ability to be resilient, because you may be focused on what's going on with them, and that just makes it harder. It's as if you're carrying more weight. So in the healthcare field, every time you go into the hospital or to the care home, the individuals you contact with, you come in contact with, they have stories that they share with you. They have struggles that they're sharing with you, and those are, if you imagine those as weights that they're just putting into your backpack, you're carrying all that weight with you, and you need to find a way of being able to move forward and release yourself from those. And so we'll get on to how to do some of that, but yeah, those stories are the things that really can weigh us down. Most importantly, resilience can be learned, practiced, developed, and strengthened. So it's a continual process that we work through. I'm going to bump to the next slide. Thank you, Courtney. Resilience could look like meeting the demands of your academic work or personal lives, taking action to deal with challenges and setbacks, seeking support and assistance when anybody needs it or yourselves need it, knowing when to stop and rest, replenish your inner resources, having a sense of independence, self-efficacy, and self-worth, and maintaining positive and mutually respectful relationships with others, having a sense of purpose and goals for the future. Again, look at all of these, what resilience could look like, because you're all going to be different. You're all going to experience it differently. And so it's really about what it is for yourself and how you see yourself at your best, your optimal state, and reflecting on what that is and whether or not that's something you need to come back to, or whether there is something you could do to help yourself move in that direction. You want to add anything, Courtney?
Yeah, I think it's also sometimes hard to think about resiliency and what that looks like, especially when we've been in a pandemic for 3 years now, and the differences of who we were before then and who we are now, and how the work through a pandemic has really impacted our self-care, our independence, and our self-worth, I think, is a really important one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we may have been continuously going to work, but everything else sort of in our personal lives, maybe more isolation and having less supports to sort of go to and connect with. And so how did that impact our work? And then responding to the pandemic within the workspace as well. The fatigue that everybody is experiencing. I'm going to say everybody, I'm making that generalization, but I feel like as a collective, everyone's sort of experiencing that fatigue and this slow transition to what life looks like after the pandemic, and how does resiliency play into that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's normal to it's difficult to sort of say, what does that resiliency look like to me now? And sort of looking at that self-care piece, and what does the future look like moving forward? Because I think coming out of this, there's been a lot of unknown going through it, and sort of what's the new normal going to be like, and sort of acknowledging that piece.
Yeah. Thanks, Courtney. And so how do you cultivate resilience? It's through a number of ways: self-engagement, self-awareness, and self-care. So some tools there, your attention and your focus, meaning, as well as a growth mindset. We'll give you some examples as to what those are in the next slides. So social engagement, cultivating social connections and avoiding social isolation. is one of the best ways to build resilience. How do you connect with individuals in your surroundings? Positive peer relationships and supportive interaction with family, faculty, and staff are known to be important factors in emotional well-being. So how do you do that? Find ways to connect in meaningful ways. So maybe you're reaching out and you've got a team that you play with, or you go for games or anything like that. Try to unplug from some of the online, all of us with our pocket computers. Try to unplug and connect with somebody face to face. Join a group, an organization, or a team if that's your thing. The opportunity always to volunteer. Practice random acts of kindness. Start conversations and ask questions and be an active listener. I want to be clear though that some of these statements about how to do it can sound very contrite. They can be, practice random acts of kindness. That can be a really great thing, but it's not necessarily the only thing, and it's not a magic wand. It's one of those things that you can do to connect with other individuals in a space so that you know that you're not alone. And I think that's one of the things that I find really beneficial for making sure that resilience and how we bounce back is connecting with individuals to know that you have somebody that you can speak with to help you know that you're not alone in the things that are going on. Anything else, Courtney?
Yeah, I think when I think of resilience, I think of balance and sort of what does that look like? And I think in working on the front lines, it's really hard coming out of that workspace and wanting to socialize and connect with others because we're so tired after a day of work, right? And we've been working with people. So what does that look like, right? What does being social look like for you? And it could be within the workplace, right? Connecting with your colleagues and your coworkers for that collective care. But then what does social engagement look like outside of the workplace? Do you have energy? Do you have time? So where does that balance come in, and sort of looking at your work-life balance and sort of where you could change some things to have more of a social balance. So connecting with people that maybe don't work in the field, and how do you fill yourself up, right? My counselor talks about refilling the cup, right? So that you're constantly pouring it out during the workday, but then how do you refill it for yourself? And does that involve friends and family outside of the work? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thanks, Courtney. Self-awareness and self-care. Self-awareness is your capacity to clearly understand your own strengths, vulnerabilities, emotions, values, natural inclinations, tendencies, and motivations. Whereas self-care refers to behaviors, thoughts, and attitudes that support your emotional well-being and physical health. How do you move forward with that? Eating well can be really beneficial, moving your body. And when I say moving your body, a lot of people go, like we need to work out or do something, really where we are getting that physical activity high. I always go back to small steps. We need to be able to make small changes in our lives so that they become habits. And when I used to work in primary care, physicians would refer their patients to myself, and I would provide a mental health prescription. And on there, I would basically go through what the individual would tell me are the things that they like doing, and I would ask them how often do they do those. Many times during the pandemic, the statement was, "Well, I haven't done it in since before the pandemic." And so, getting individuals to go back to, well, maybe starting once a week to do one of those things, whether it be to pick up the book that you like reading once a week, and then the next week, see whether or not you have more mental space to do that. Being really gentle and really kind with yourself, allowing yourself to go slow so you can build those habits is really beneficial. Do your best to get enough sleep. It's not always the easiest when stress is high, but doing your best. Obviously, try to manage stress. Practice self-compassion. We all make mistakes. And as I'm reminded daily from my children, I need to be really kind to myself. And To be totally honest, I also have MS, and I've been struggling with MS for 20 years. And so managing stress, being self-compassionate is something that I really try to hang on to, because when my stress gets really high, I might end up, losing sight or not being able to walk and things like that. So it's something to really sort of hold on to. Cultivate opportunities for personal growth. Develop interests outside of your career. So what are the things you like doing? What are the things that really, really bring life to yourself? Whether it be artistic ventures, whether it be active things you like doing, try to see how those things you can do more of, or how to incorporate them into your regular life. And if those are things that you have forgotten over the past long time, then maybe to try to add them into your week, and schedule them in even, and make time for quiet reflection. I find that many of the other things fall in well when we take time for quiet reflection. To stop and sit on my drive here to Merritt this morning, I found myself, having music and keeping myself awake and driving, and then I said, I need to just stop and look at my beautiful surroundings, and so shut the music off and just quietly drove and looked around whilst paying attention to the road, but just took some nice deep breaths and felt myself just sort of settle back into my body, and I wasn't going through what I need to do today. So all things that are opportunities to be able to move forward with. Attention and focus. Attention really allows you to tune out information. You can focus on what you need to and block the other things, your sensations and perceptions that are not relevant at the moment, and instead focus your energy on the information that is important to you. So how do you train that? Train your mental focus through meditation, visualization, deep breathing exercises like I did on my drive over this morning, as well as other techniques that we can obviously pass on to you. And there's lots of other information about that. Mindfulness is a very large one as well that people use lots of, and there's a lot of evidence that supports mindfulness. Focus on one thing at a time, maybe even making lists, so then you know what you need to do and you can strike them off. Avoid multitasking. I don't know if anybody's read the research on multitasking. We're not good at it. That's simply it. So when we have, and everybody is multitasking. So we need to be mindful of the fact that when we do multitasking, which we're inevitably going to be doing, because we all have a work life and we all have an outside of work life, really try to be mindful of what you're doing, because you can lose your focus there. Unplug and take a break from checking your phone and emails when you're off work, or during your breaks, right? When you go take a break, or you're walking to the coffee room to go grab a tea or coffee or a glass of water, just leave everything at your desk, if you have that opportunity, and walk away for those few minutes. One of the things is about going back to that reflection, recognizing in the moment when you are stopping for yourself. It's really easy let's go back to when I was driving, to shut the music off and just keep driving. But when I said, you know what, I want to actually just slow down and be mindful of what I'm doing, then I shut the music off. And I was able to take the moment to breathe and recognize where I was, recognize the things I was able to be grateful for and what I was seeing. And it really had an opportunity to change the state that I was in, or support my own well-being in that moment. So taking those small moments of going, I'm going to sit with my hot cup of coffee or tea, and I'm going to drink this, because that email can wait 30 seconds. And taking a 30-second break can really have a benefit even.
Yeah, and I think the piece about attention and focus is just to ground ourselves within our lives and the work that we do, because like I said before, and Giles has said it as well, is in this work, it's just go, 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 go. And we sort of get disconnected from reality and disassociate, or, whatever might happen. And sometimes we need to take that 5-minute break or 30 seconds to just sort of tune into, where we at. what am I feeling physically in my body? You know, where's the tension sitting? Where's the fatigue sitting? And I find what's helpful for me is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? Just going for a quick walk, 5 things that I can see. I think this is right, correct me if I'm wrong. 4 things that I feel, 3 things that I hear, 2 that I smell, and then 1 that I taste. And I find, you know, that just helps ground me and makes me very aware of my environment that I'm in. And sort of gives me that time to just take that breath and sort of refocus and yeah, see where I'm at in the day. And that sort of comes back to that mental health continuum model as well.
Yeah, thanks. Finding meaning is the act of making sense of and exploring the significance of an experience or situation. Research shows that cultivating a sense of meaning in your life can contribute more to positive mental health than pursuing happiness. So taking a moment to identify what's your purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? And what brings you back to the work every day? Because as these things keep on going, and all of a sudden, you know, we hear about the high cost of living or inflation, work can seem like a way to pad the pocketbook, which it is, right? And it supports our life. But the choice to come and do what you're doing, which is an unbelievably beneficial thing, and we thank you so much for, it's really important to take that time to reflect on that. So come to understand your purpose, recognize your values. How do your values play into the work you do? And pursue your interests. Develop realistic goals and work towards them. Take the time to identify and even write down some of your goals. Maybe you have work goals or life goals, and maybe some of them overlap. And so to identify them and write them down can really help you in an opportunity to be able to look at what your next steps are so you can achieve those goals and feel like the value and meaning that you're putting into your work, you're really getting out of it. Keep a long-term perspective. Things can be difficult. We've got the ebb and flow of life, ebb and flow of work, and things can change over the long term. And so when you set those goals and you keep a long-term perspective, you can see beyond the immediate frustrations or stress sometimes. Embrace change. I think many of us are learning how to deal with change because things have just been changing everywhere. Whether it be from some of the natural disasters we've experienced, whether it be from some of the, you know, the upheaval and the war in Ukraine or the difficulties going on in other countries, we're getting used to how to deal with these different things in our lives. Reflect on what's going well. And also what's not going so well. Gives you an opportunity to look at and identify the differences and see what, if anything, you can change. Strive to accept what you cannot change and take action where you can.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when we lose that sense of meaning or purpose or why we are in the work that we do, and we sort of become overwhelmed, say in the politics or, you know, still coming out of that pandemic piece, we sort of get lost in our work and we become cynical of the work that we do in the field that we work. And I think that's very common. And that's one of the most common reasons why burnout is so prominent right now within all workplaces, especially in those that support vulnerable people. And so just refocusing, and that could be yourself and then also your colleagues. Why are you all in the field that you are in, and why are you all within this organization that you're working for, and just coming together and connecting on that? Because I think what's important in this field is coming together as a collective and a team, because I think we don't really understand, or maybe we're not aware that maybe everybody else on our team is experiencing this fatigue, this burnout that we're going through, and how can we connect and work through it and get through the day, one day at a time, or getting through sort of the heavier things that we might not have control over. And what can we focus on this day in this moment to, you know, keep us moving and keep us motivated in the work and a shared goal that we have together.
Yeah. Chris? A growth mindset. I don't know whether or not any of you have heard of a growth mindset before, but a growth mindset acknowledges that you can learn from challenges. So that you're constantly, your brain is a muscle just like anything else, and it's growing and changing. So you can learn from the challenges, and through those experiences can increase your intellect and abilities. Along with that, you can increase your ability to deal with stress. So it's the opposite of a fixed mindset. Obviously, when you believe that your intelligence and abilities are fixed traits, that you can change. Sorry, I just noticed that Heather had that comment. How to do that? Prioritize learning over approval and the process over the end results. View challenges and setbacks as opportunities to grow. Acknowledge and embrace your imperfections. Applaud your effort and not just your abilities. Avoid comparing yourself to others. That's a pretty large one, right? And that's a lot of individuals. The comparison game is something that many of us do, and it really can impact this idea of growth mindset, because when you're comparing yourself with others, or even identifying what somebody else has done compared to what you are doing, it really stands in the way of your ability to achieve your goals and to work within what the purpose and the meaning that you've provided to your work or your life.
So the resilient mind, we want to recognize that there are sort of two sides that sort of show up: the challenges that we might focus on, and then the engagement piece. So sort of two opposites, right? The challenges, we may see the limitations, the pain of, say, working in this field, or, having worked in it over the pandemic, the absence of gratitude, feeling disconnected from your team. So sort of feeling isolated within the collective care piece. And, that sense of, I can't do anything about it, feeling hopeless or helpless in that. And then on the other side, we see the engagement aspect, and we might sort of see the opportunity. Where are those showing up in our workspace, and looking at the gains? So maybe in, team meetings, not just looking at the challenges that present themselves, but then also what's going well, what are we doing well? And even if they're little things, right, we want to sort of balance it out. We can't just look at the negative in the workplace and the places of maybe areas that we need to improve on, but what's also some things that we're doing well as individuals and as a team. And presence of gratitude, being sort of making a list that could be on your own or as a team. What are you grateful for? One thing each day, right? Sort of starting your day off. What am I grateful for? Or maybe at the end of the day, writing a list of gratitude. And then that connectedness to your team. How do you build that collective care and that vulnerability with each other, and just really working towards that collective piece and needing to do something about it? So that mindset of, okay, there's a problem that presents itself. What are we going to do to sort of help ourselves as individuals and as a team? What is in our control? Do you have anything you want to add to that, Giles?
No, I think that's great, Courtney.
Okay. So we're going to just focus on the engaging resiliency through self-care and collective care. And we're going to look at the assess and identify needs, a daily plan, just-in-time techniques, and then maintenance. So assessing and identifying your needs. This is where the mental health continuum sort of comes in, and checking in with yourself. How am I meeting life's demands? Am I responding to them well, or am I feeling a bit burnt out, like I can't handle this? And what are some supports that I could maybe identify that I need in order to feel better within myself, and then also as an employee? And then, do you have the ability to sort of assess, I need to take a break right now, whether that be during the day, okay, I need to just go for a couple of minutes, just go for a walk, or I need to, take some personal space, whether that be just going to the washroom and sitting down for a couple of minutes, because like I said before, that's sometimes the only time you get a break. And then in your personal life, when are you able to sort of recognize the heaviness and how it impacts you? And I like to touch on the physical piece, because I think stress shows up in ourselves physically before we might be able to identify it emotionally or mentally. And so just being aware of our bodies and where that tension is sitting. And yeah, just taking, like I said, that 5 minutes, whether to go take a walk outside, ground yourself, or breathing exercises, and just really hone in on what's impacting you and just being aware. Is the tension sitting in my shoulders and neck? Am I constantly, walking around with my shoulders up? And then I just need to sort of remind myself to relax. So just being that self-aware piece that Giles went over on the slides, a few back. Daily plan and routine. What does that look like? And I think it's something that we've really struggled with throughout the pandemic, that loss of routine, loss of maybe being able to go work out daily, and then sort of coming back into that routine of what does it look like now? I mean, things are opening up again, but then working within the healthcare system, what does our routine look like throughout the day, whether that be through work or personal life? How do you start your day? Giles touched on this, healthy eating habits. Are you even remembering to eat throughout your workday, right? Are you taking time for a lunch? Are you able to step away and eat a snack? And what are your sleeping habits like? Are you able to sleep throughout the night? What is that looking like? Do you have time to rest and sort of allow your body to relax? And I know sometimes that exercise piece can be a bit daunting, and that doesn't mean going to the gym or going for a run. Like Giles said, it could just be a walk, a short walk, just to start, right? Baby steps and sort of building off of that. Spiritual aspect, are there any cultural practices that you engage in? Do you spend time out in nature? That's a big one that sort of helps ground us. Are you in a space where you can go out hiking on the weekends or go for a walk on your break? And the meditation, do you practice that? Just a few minutes a day to start your day can make a huge difference. There's a lot of research behind it, and it's actually quite interesting to look into that and the impacts on whether you like listening to podcasts or reading books, sort of exploring that side of things. The emotional piece of that daily self-care plan. And this isn't about reinventing the wheel, right? I want you to sort of look at your life. What are things that you sort of already do to take care of yourself, or what are things that you already enjoy doing? We don't have to find these new activities necessarily. Of course, that could be something you can look into, but I think looking at a daily plan can be quite intimidating. So what are the things that you can sort of pull out of your daily life already that are important to you, and maybe increasing those and how often you do it? Acknowledge your personal accomplishments. And this could be a team thing, right? Acknowledging the accomplishments that your team member is doing, or if you're a supervisor, manager, making or allowing your staff to feel appreciated in the work that they do, and sort of recognizing that in yourself. What am I doing in my work or my personal life? That could be, career accomplishments, whether you like doing art and you're really good at it, just acknowledging that part of yourself. And how do you release emotion? Is that something you do with a counselor? Is that something you do with friends and family? Say you call somebody up and you have that person that you're able to be vulnerable with and connect with and just share and just vent and get things off of your shoulders. And it's good to allow ourselves that time to release those emotions, because I find within the support that we provide, Giles and I and our team, there's just this buildup of emotions, and people within the frontline work, we don't have time to sort of give ourselves a space to just cry or let those emotions out. And so they build. That's where that tension comes in, that physical aspect of it building within our bodies. And so do you have someone that you can be emotional with or release those emotions, whether that be through writing in a journal? It's important to have some sort of outlet, and that could be different for everyone. And the last one, checking in with each other, is so important. And I think what we want to sort of do with these workshops is start the conversation so that you can bring it back to your team. That self-care, that collective care, we want to be able to have discussions about it, because everyone's going through something. Everyone's feeling the weight of, like Giles said, the housing crisis, the climate crisis, the drug poisoning crisis, and the pandemic. We've all been experiencing it. So how are we doing as a whole? And just being transparent. That's what sort of we want to encourage through our work, is just sharing with each other. And then the last one, the mental, the psychological aspect, taking time for yourself. We acknowledge that it can be very, very hard to do that, sort of recognizing when you have those few minutes within the day to take that break. And then pursuing new interests, is that something you have the time and capacity to do? Because maybe it's not. Maybe you just need to focus in on those things that you're already doing for yourself and building off of that. Do you have
Going
anything
back-
you want to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking, going back to the emotional state, and when, finding someone to release those emotions with, I think it's good to be clear that, finding somebody that's a safe person for you, and that, somebody that you don't feel will second guess or judge or question any of the things, because sometimes you just need to get it off. And so if you have somebody who is there and willing to be able to do that, great. But not everybody does, right? My partner, I'm able to say some stuff to them, but they don't want to. And I'm also not going to share everything with them. And so that's the reason why I go on and use Crisis Line. And that's the reason why I have a counselor, because I need to have that safe space to be able to just release some of the emotions of everything that's been going on. And then I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about, a colleague saying, oh, well, maybe Giles shouldn't be doing, blah, blah, blah. Thankfully I've got supportive teammates and I don't have to worry about that. But at the same time, I also don't share everything with everybody. So finding the safe space for yourself and what works best for you, all coming back to yourself and reflecting on what works for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point to put out there, is that, just acknowledging that, not everybody has that person that they can go to, and accessing, there's certain levels of support, right? The crisis support, counseling, us, the mobile response team, and then we could also look at personal support systems too. And just in time techniques. So that comes into being aware of, okay, I feel like I may be getting close, or I'm sort of teetering on that burnout stage. Where am I at in that? Maybe I'm already sitting in that burnout stage, right? But what are some things that I could maybe do to pull myself out of those overwhelming feelings? If I feel like I'm getting to a place of burnout, what are some tools that I can use to prevent that? So relaxation, staying calm. So deep breathing, box breathing, right? Counting to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4, holding 1, 2, 3, 4, and then letting it out 1, 2, 3, 4, and sort of just doing that a few times. And that breathing out really, it activates the vagus nerve and it forces us to relax. So even if we feel like we're highly stimulated, breathing in and out a few times does work physiologically. So that could be helpful. Positive self-talk. This is a hard one, I think, to just to focus on, because I feel like it's quite human for us to have that negative voice inside of our minds, and it sort of can be a bit controlling. So how do we navigate that? How do we become aware of our thought processes and understanding that, okay, I have a thought that enters my mind, acknowledge it, and then let it go. I don't know if anybody reads Eckhart Tolle, or just, living in the present moment and being aware of what thoughts are coming in and out of our minds. Because if we become aware of them, we can sort of see how negative and how hard we can be on ourselves. And then if we acknowledge that piece, the negative self-talk, then we can sort of start to transition more into a positive self-talk. Yeah, go ahead, Giles.
When I think about the positive self-talk, I always have this image of Dana Carvey on Saturday Night Live 20 plus years ago as the church lady, and he would say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me, right? And totally ridiculous, but at the same time, just seeing him dressed up in that character and saying those things, it is those small things that you can, you say stuff that is positive about yourself, and recognizing what are the positive things that you do and you bring to the people in your life, as well as what you bring for yourself, is really beneficial. Because as Courtney said, there's a lot of negative self-talk that we have coming at us.
No, that's a funny one. Social supports. So that could be another support that we could access when we feel like we're getting to that point of crises or burnout, whatever that is. And those people might be able to catch us and provide that support so that we can prevent ourselves from going to that crisis mode. And that could be, individuals that we have in our lives, coworkers, it could be a community, it could be cultural supports, it could look like professional support as well. And then mood. What are some things that make you happy and that make you feel good? Could it be, something that happens outdoors, a creative sort of space, whether that be art, do you like music, and just sort of focusing in on what makes us feel good. I know sometimes that can be hard to think of. And when we're in that crisis mode, we're like, nothing works, nothing feels good. And we sort of get that pessimistic, that negative thought, right, that comes in, and we sort of feel helpless. Like, what? I don't feel like anything can sort of help me in this situation. And that's where that mental health continuum comes in. So maybe you're already at that crisis mode. You haven't been able to sort of figure out or notice steps before you reach that phase. And that's okay, because that happened to me, and that's what led to my burnout. And we're just sort of here to provide that insight and that conversation around self-awareness and bring it into the workplace to help prevent getting to that stage. Anything else you want to add, Joe?
No, I think that's perfect.
And then self-care maintenance. So reflecting on maybe some techniques that you've used in the past or you're currently using, are they helping you, or do you sort of need to think of different things to, bring into your daily plan and your self-care? And reflecting, right? Writing down what is working, what is not, pros, cons list, visualizing it on a piece of paper, I think is sometimes the best tool to have, because we can have these thoughts that are going through our mind and not be aware of all of them. And then once we write them down and have that visual aspect, we can say, okay, this is what I need to work on. This is what's not working. Where do I go from here? Yeah, and I think we really want to focus in on what are our strengths and how do we engage them. We often forget that when we're so burnt out, we're tired, we're, go on our feet all day. What am I good at? We forget to recognize that about ourselves and our team. What are we doing well? And I think that's part of that self-care maintenance, so that we can hone in on those strengths, utilize them, and bring them to the table. Anything else, Joss?
No, that's perfect.
I'm just looking at, okay, we don't have much time left, and I just want to be, okay, so this is this discussion piece. So 2 questions. How do you already cultivate resiliency or collective care, self-care? And then how do you cultivate your growth mindset? What does that look like? I don't know if people want to jump into the discussion, the chat box, or people want to take themselves off of mute and chime in. I'm going to, I'm just going to take it off screen share. And then we can have a discussion.
About 2 minutes. Is that fair?
Do we have a few minutes?
Yep. So far we haven't had any questions come in. So if everyone would like to discuss and chat and share, that's totally fine.
What do we do for self-care? What does resiliency mean to you? Does it sort of bug you to hear that word, or is it a positive thing?
As a mental health professional, I'm going to say it right off the hop. Self-care, the term self-care, I find is a buzz term, and it's becoming frustrating for me. And so when I look at that, I want to go back to what are the things that I do that are positive activities for me. And the more things that I do that I feel positive when I do them, the more positive I am going to feel, and I'm going to be feeling better. So I do a lot of things outside, but then I also go and, hug my family and then I, lay down and hug my dog. So Stephanie, you were going to say something.
Yeah, so I'm a nurse in Ontario, and I've been working well before the pandemic. And I can honestly say that the word resilience is almost like a trigger word for me because of the way that it was used during the pandemic.
Right.
And it was almost used to slight us in certain circumstances. Like they would try to tell us that we weren't resilient enough, but we were literally just doing the best we could with what we had.
Right.
And watching like this presentation and your slides that discuss like just different ways to recognize resiliency, it's just very interesting to me now to self-reflect and see that I was being resilient in the moment, or finding ways to become more resilient, because I really, like, that's your choice, right? Like you do something or you do nothing, and you kind of sit and stew in the same pot. And I wasn't willing to do that. So thank you for your presentation and that ability to self-reflect. And I don't know if you've heard of that becoming a trigger for people before, but that's how I've felt.
No, 100%. That comes up in, I'd say, almost every conversation that I have with frontline people, Stephanie, that resiliency being a trigger word. And so that's sort of why we wanted to acknowledge that within this workshop, because yeah, it's something we see that comes up quite a bit. And I think today, what I find important is just to create this conversation, right? What does it mean to you? And it really sucks that people didn't get the acknowledgement that they deserved throughout the pandemic. And I'm really sorry that that was the case for you, because so many people, we're all working our butts off and trying to sort of figure out how do we navigate this unprecedented sort of situation. And yeah, I'm glad that you shared that with us. Thank you, Stephanie. And I also want to acknowledge some comments that are coming up in the chat.
They're great.
Yeah, I noticed Allison, the we care instead of self-care is sort of to put, yeah, so shifting that responsibility, and then the self-care not being selfish. I think that's a really good distinction to make, and focusing on ourselves, we need to, because if we can't, then we can provide the support to those that we're providing the support to, right? That analogy of the being on the plane, you put your oxygen mask on first before you put on someone else's.
Yeah, very much.
Hiking, I'm just sort of going through, seeing psychologist,
yeah.
Moving daily, yeah, drinking water is a big one. Flush out toxins and keep ourselves well hydrated.
I want to say, just the fact that all of you are logged in here is a sign of your resiliency. So whether you feel like you're struggling or not, you are here right now. You have committed to be, on the job, and hopefully you weren't forced to come here by anybody. So, but that being said, you are here, and you have worked through the years of the pandemic, and there have been a number of struggles that have gone on. So thank you, and recognize that you are doing a really great job. And the job that you are doing is abundantly meaningful.
Yeah, I really like the conversation. Sorry?
Do you have any more slides to finish?
I think that was it. I think there was just...
It's just a thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm just... Supported debriefing builds resilience. Yes, that's a big one. And that's something our team provides, as well as coming in to help facilitate those debriefs or group supports. And that does build on that collective care. Knowing when to ask for help. Sorry, go ahead, Giles. I'm just sort of skimming.
Yeah, I'm just seeing the question from Christine. I don't think we're gonna run out of time, Christine. So I'm wondering whether it's possible for you to take the email and or I'm gonna put. Do you want me to put yours down too, Courtney?
I can just put mine in the comments if you want to do the same, and then I'll.
So what we'll do is we'll add in our emails, and please just email us if you have those questions. Christine, please email that question to either one of us. We'll get back to you about how we can support you in that. All right. Oh, yes, I'll do that too. Our phone numbers, I want to say just that our phone numbers are available for you to reach out, text us, or call us, and we can arrange to get back to you at an earliest opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and to Courtney and Giles for this wonderful presentation. It was so wonderful to kind of learn new techniques, but also reminding ourselves of some of the things that we've already have been doing and how we can restart to do those again, and how important it is for us to do that. So just to be mindful of everyone's time, thank you so much for attending. And we will be sharing the recording, the slides, and all the contact information in a post-webinar email. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.